Welcome, friends, to another one of our Crystal Clarity author interviews. It's a great joy and privilege to have Nayaswami Savitri with us this morning for an informal discussion. Savitri is a beloved teacher and longtime member of Ananda. I believe she came around 1975 and has taught hundreds of courses, everything from the yoga teacher training to meditation teacher training to immersive courses in the chakras. And through her spiritual journey, she has taken this deep inward dive and has written a book called Chakras for Starters that's published by Crystal Clarity, along with a couple novels of her own, which are deeply inspiring. So, Savitri, welcome. I'm really glad we're getting to have this
Thank you,
conversation.
Naria. It's very nice to be here with you.
Yeah, and I thought that we would start with you and your story because not many people watching this will really know much about you and how you came to Ananda and the spiritual path and all of this. How did it begin?
Well, I was born and raised, as they say, in the South, and you'll hear the South in my voice. I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, and not too far from where Elvis was, right down the street from me, actually. And my girlfriend and I used to ride our bicycles over to his house and see his new pink Cadillac when he got it and watch his rise to fame. So I lived in Memphis till I was 18, and then I went away to college in Texas. And I went to Baylor University in Texas. And when I graduated from college, I majored in English, so maybe that's why I like to write books. I was like literature and things like that.
Mhm.
But there's not a lot you do with an English major except teach. But I didn't want to teach, so I got a job with an airline and started flying around the world, having a good time, seeing the world. I wanted to travel, and so I got to do that. And I was based in Houston, Texas at the time.
Mhm.
And I did that for about 8 years. And then I got tired of that and moved into a hippie commune out near Austin, Texas, and learned how to grow herbs and make quilts and go back to the land and all that kind of good stuff. And during that time period, I did find and read the autobiography of a yogi, which has always been my pole star, the most important book I ever read for sure. But I mean, here I was deep in the heart of Texas and not knowing what to do. I didn't know whether there were other. I didn't even know the word disciple or devotee or anything like that. I thought I was all alone, and I kind of was for quite a while. But somewhere in that time frame, somebody mentioned to me that there was a small community in Northern California where all the people who lived there were followers of Yogananda. They knew I was attracted to this path. And so I was thrilled to get this news because I was already living in a community. It was small and not much to it, but I was always been very interested in community living and also, of course, Yogananda in this path. I didn't have Kriya initiation or anything yet. I'd studied a little bit of the lessons, but not much. So I finally found the address for Ananda. There was no such thing as emails or websites or anything in those days. So it took a little bit of detective work, and I wrote a letter. And the woman here, Ananda, wrote me back, and she said, "I'm so glad to hear from you. Why don't you come visit?" And I thought, wow, this is great. I'm definitely going to do that. So I did. It took me a little while, but I flew out here for the first time in the summer of 1975 and stayed for 2 months and did what was then called the apprentice program, worked in the gardens here, met everybody, and most important of all, I met Swami Kriyananda. And that was, I guess, second to reading autobiography of a yogi, was the most important moment in my life, because at that point I could see what my life was going to be, or at least where I wanted it to go. I wanted to be a disciple of this path, and I wanted to live in Ananda. So it took me 3 years from the day I came here to actually physically move here. And I say that because there wasn't much here. There
Mhm.
was nothing to live in, no few teepees and bread trucks that people were living in and things like that. So it took a little doing to get myself here. But I did move in the summer of 1978 and worked at the meditation retreat as a cook in the kitchen. And of course, Swami was giving classes all the time, and hundreds of people were coming. And it was a wonderful first summer for me, or second if you count the first one I was here. I actually came back twice between the first time I moved here and when I finally moved here. The second time, let's see, 1, 2, 3. The third time I came before I actually moved here, I came in the dead of winter because I wanted to see if I could stand it.
From
I
Texas.
grew up in the South. I don't
Right.
like cold weather, you know.
Right.
And I thought, oh no, how can I do that? But I figured it out. And by that time, I made a lot of good friends here who uh, were willing to assist me to live here. And Swami told me he thought I should live here, which is a pretty good thing. And so then from 1978 onward, I've lived at Ananda Village, but I've also lived in some of our colonies as you live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I've lived in other places, other Ananda places also over the years.
Let me ask you just to back up. What was it about it sounded like there was two seminal moments there in your early spiritual awakening, the
Right.
reading of autobiography and meeting Swami Kriyananda. What was it about the autobiography, and then what was it about Swamiji that sort of had these great inflections for you?
The autobiography of a yogi is a thrilling book. I've read it. I don't know. I must have read it 40 times since then. I never get tired of it. It's just the book that changed my life. I had never heard about Indian yogis or any of that stuff, but I just felt like a duck to the water. It all attracted me so much. And I was, I have to say, I was a little disappointed that when I realized that Yogananda was not alive.
Mm,
Because if he had been, I'd have done what Swami did. I'd have gotten on the next bus.
yeah.
And but he wasn't. So then what? Where am I with that? What do I do? Um, yeah, that was a little bit of a hard part of it for me. But the book was absolutely thrilling, and all the stories of the saints and miracles, and I just loved it all. I really did. Still do. Yeah. So, but then when I got to Ananda, see, I didn't know who this Swami Kriyananda person was. I didn't know how he fit into this picture at all.
Mm,
I had heard that he was a disciple. He had lived with Yogananda. He was a disciple, but I just didn't quite get it. So I had a few fears and trepidations about who was this person going to be. So when I first arrived here, the first 2 or 3 days, I was quizzing everybody. Who is this guy and what is he like, and all of that. And so I'd been here for about a week when I went to the first time he gave Sunday service that I was here, and it was so impressive to me. I mean, I after my first quote meeting with him, I didn't actually meet him; I just heard him speak. I had no more. Again, I just saw my life's direction. I needed to be a disciple of Yogananda. I needed to move to Ananda. I needed to serve. Just all those things just came perfectly clear to me. But there was another little interesting moment in that first talk he gave that I heard.
hmm
He used to sort of scan the audience, and he would look into people's eyes and say something that was, might awaken them in some way or answer some question they had. And that day he looked right in my eyes, and I don't know what he was talking about. I don't remember. It was a good talk, but he said, by the way, I'm not the guru here at Ananda. Paramhansa Yogananda is our guru. But I have been a disciple of his for whatever it was at that time, 30 years. And if I can be of help to you as your fellow disciple, if you'd like to learn from me, I am most happy to serve in that way.
Wow.
Well, it took away all my fears because I had you know what you hear about. I had this vision of some guy in an orange robe, which he happened to have on. Some guy in an orange robe saying, "Okay, bow, neophyte, and by the way, I want all your money," and things like that. You know, all the stories that used to be out about gurus and spiritual teachers and this, but I knew the genuine thing when I saw it. I knew it when I saw it, and I never looked back. So
Wow. So that genuine um, expression that Swamiji said of that he was a disciple and just willing to be of service and to help, that really took all your reservations away, it sounds,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I didn't know. Like I said, I just didn't know how he fit into this picture of Yogananda in his path, and I didn't even know the right questions to ask. I just had, I was green. I was very green, very new,
Yeah.
very unknowing of anything other than what I'd read in the autobiography of a yogi. And I'd learned how to meditate a little bit. But then all the doors, the Kriya, the path to Kriya, the other techniques I learned, Swami taught all the time, and I learned from him, Hong Sa, energization, Om, Kriya, so those early years were wonderful, really.
Tell us a little bit about that, Savitri, because you've written, of course, the Chakras for Starters book, and you've taught a lot about this inner journey, and you're living in a dome, I believe, right? Isn't this
I
a
am.
geodesic
I'm sitting
dome?
behind me.
Yeah. So
I live in a geodesic dome, just like Swami always thought it was
yeah,
a good idea, and I think it's a good idea too.
yeah, I love domes. I mean, I've been at the meditation retreat, the dome there, and I've loved the meditation temple there. Tell us a little bit about why Swami loved the geodesic dome, and maybe how that's even related, to the spiritual path here.
Well, Swami was very sensitive to colors and forms and shapes and music. It's it's the most sensitive person I've ever met, I'm sure. And when he was beginning to build Ananda, he didn't want these little square boxes for people to live in, if at all possible. He wanted something more conducive to people's spiritual growth or the environment around them. And he had, I think he'd had some experience in cathedrals in Europe. He spent a lot of time in Europe as a young man with the dome shape over the top of your head rather than the flat
Mm.
surface. And he felt that, he used to tell us about how, I forget which Native American tribe couldn't stand boxes. They said that there were evil spirits over in the corners and things,
Hmm.
and that they had more like teepees or hogans or things with the more rounded
Yeah.
shape. So he felt that we should have little domes for all of us to live in, but he hadn't heard about the geodesic dome at that point. And domes were just not being built really by anybody anywhere until he bumped into Buckminster Fuller. Not literally, he read his books, as many of us did. And he taught, he, I guess, invented, I don't know, the geodesic dome, which is triangles put together to make the round shape.
Right.
And Swami would say, well, it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing, or better than a flat square box kind of thing. So the first buildings he built at Ananda were domes, geodesic domes. And that's how it got it started. He encouraged everyone who moved here who wanted to build something to build a dome, and many people did. And
Mm.
I'm living now in one of those first domes that was built here. I live at Ananda Village. The first domes were built at the meditation retreat. That was the dining room dome and the kitchen dome and the office dome, and then the big temple dome. And you can read all about that in his book, The New Path. I mean, he kept building them, they kept falling down, blowing down, whatever, crashing and burning, and But finally, we got one that lasted quite a long time. And,
So that the dome, it sounds like has an effect on your consciousness.
oh yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, I didn't live in one until we've been living in this one now at Ananda Village for 20 years. And that's the longest I've ever lived anywhere. And I love the feeling of it. I really do. But before that, I lived in whatever I could live in here. But I used to love to go to Swami's home and sit in his dome in the living room of his home. And that, I don't know, I always felt, I felt he was absolutely right about that, and how where we live affects our consciousness.
Well, it makes sense related to the chakras too, because those triangles form like a five-pointed star, and aren't the chakras, you've written about this, Yogananda's teachings, that they're different
Shapes, yeah,
shapes and lights and
yeah,
emanations.
yes. It's all tied in together, and yeah, that's one of the more esoteric parts of the when you study the chakras. That I usually try to wait to get to that part because there's so many other things that are so very important about the chakras, especially around um, spiritual attitudes and the way they are a conduit for life force up and down the spine, and their place in the practices of Kriya Yoga, as you know, are very, very important.
But tell
So
us
it
about
always
those.
fascinated me.
Yeah, tell us about those sort of primary important attitudes that are related to the chakras, Savitri.
Well, Swami used to tell us that of all the aspects of the chakras, and there are many, many, and they're a lot of fun. Just so much. That's always why I've been fascinated with them. Is they're just so much fun. They're so colorful and fun. But he would say of all the aspects, there's two. One is how energy runs through the spine, and the other is that how within our chakras is contained our basic spiritual attitudes. And one reason for that is because the chakras also store our karma, our
Mm.
past karma, the who and what we are, all our actions in this lifetime and every other lifetime. And that would be, of course, obviously both positive and not so positive, helpful and harmful attitudes, I like to call them, or helpful and harmful karma. So the chakras are a storehouse for what makes us who we are, not in just this life, but from every other lifetime we've ever lived. So each chakra has a set of basic helpful and harmful tendencies to them. For example, the first chakra, you can either be grounded and firm and courageous and strong in that first chakra,
Mm.
or you can get rigid
Mm.
and not be willing to make any changes in your life. A lot of people get stuck in the first chakra and don't go any further. They
Mm.
just don't want any change.
Yeah.
And so then the second chakra, they tend to balance each other out, especially the first and second ones. It's just the opposite. It's flexible. It's water. The first chakra is earth. These are the symbols. Earth, and then water. Water is fluid, it's flexible, it's beautiful, it's moving, it's never still. You can't pick it up. It's not solid
Mm.
like the first chakra. And so the attitudes with that on the positive side are flexibility, creativity, moving and changing, the willingness to change. Just like water comes up to a rock, it just goes around it. It doesn't try to beat its way through, although it probably could, because water is very strong. But so the first and second chakras are so pretty. They just balance each other and help each other. And it goes that way all the way up the chakras. All of the first six, anyway,
Mm.
are paired off so that they help each other. And it's a beautiful, beautiful system that God has given us to have as a spiritual body, or an energetic body.
How about the heart center? The world has gone through, a lot of pain and suffering the last couple of years of the
Yeah.
pandemic, and now, potential world war. How do you help people that are struggling with grief, loss of a loved one, or, hatred, anger, these type of emotions which are centered in the heart? But how do you help them work with them in a constructive way rather than letting them eat them up?
Well, first, let me say one thing about the chakras in general that I really try to stress, because Swami stressed it, and it is that it's never a good idea to focus on only one chakra. They're two interconnected. Now, the heart chakra is a very, very important chakra. It's the place of devotion, of unconditional love. And we're not going anywhere on the spiritual path without working a fair amount with the heart chakra. But it's not alone. It's one of 7 chakras. Right. So always, if you're feeling great sorrow or grief, think about the one beneath it. And that's your willpower, human willpower and strength. And the one above it, which is communication and just the willingness to grow and that sort of thing. So feel that you've got friends, and not just the heart. You have friends in your chakra system that will help, and try to put it into the context of a whole system. But in the heart itself, when there is a not helpful attitude or something going on in the heart center, think about what's the positive side of it. Because in the heart chakra, it's always the biggest and most wonderful thing is divine unconditional love and devotion. So what can we do to increase the good part, to counter so I mean, right now I would say one of the best things anybody can do is do a lot of chanting, increasing your devotion, opening your heart. And when the other side of that chakra wants to say, oh, everything's terrible, everybody I know is dying, or whatever terrible things going on, just say, wait a minute, do I choose to live in the unhelpful part of my heart chakra, or do I choose to live in a higher aspect of that chakra, which is, you know how it is on our path. I mean, Swami said often, over and over again, you're not going to take one step on the path very well without the love of the heart, the devotional sense of it. Chanting is half the battle. I mean, so many things he said, and Master said too, Yogananda said about the necessity of working with opening the heart, door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee. That sums it up right there.
Yeah. Well, that's really helpful also, though, how you reminded us that we're an integrated whole. It's not just focusing on one center, that we have friends like with
it's tempting to say, oh, I need to work with my heart chakra. Oh, I have a sore throat, so I need to work with my throat chakra,
Right.
Well, that's not the way it works. You could have a sore throat that doesn't have anything to do with your physical. That's the physical. We're talking energy. And energy, and by the way, there's no such thing as a blocked chakra. You cannot block a chakra. The life force has to flow or you're going to be a dead person. But they can get clogged up, granted, but with old karma and various things. And what we do, one of the major things we do is run more energy through that whole system. And when we say energy, we mean prana, and that's conscious cosmic energy. And the key word there is conscious. It knows where to go. It knows what to do. It knows what's wrong with you in any chakra. You just need to give it the chance to go there, and that means, as we do with Kriya and all the practice of our path, is that it's all about moving that energy through the whole, not just to one chakra, not to 2 or 3, but the whole thing, and let its consciousness, and it's beneficial. It knows what you need. Go there and work with it and fix it and send it up, and it's always an inward and upward flow. Because we're countering what is the human nature to have energy come into us and then go down and out. I often tell people when teaching the chakras, you can see yourself, you're like a sieve. You're just losing energy all over the place. It comes in, you got plenty of it, boom, it goes out again. And if you mentioned the heart, that's a big one. If you could see the energy patterns of your heart, more than likely, what you see is strings and cords and cables and attachments. This is attachments, and they go out, and they, I love my car, and I love my life, and my wife, and I love all these things. And not only do I love them, but I can't live without them. And, you get bound with attachments. And that's where the heart, again, is such an important chakra. And one of the visualizations that Swami gave us often was to visualize cutting off those cords, letting go of all they'll come back. But for now, let go of all the attachments that hold us and keep us from our ascent. This is a real, can stop things there, not totally, but again, there's no such thing as a blocked chakra, but it can get, in this case, not so much even clogged, it's just bound with the ropes and strings and cords of attachments. Yeah.
And so it sounds like too, you were talking about bringing in that more of that prana, that conscious cosmic energy into the whole chakra system. You were kind of touching on a little bit, but this is related to the path of Kriya Yoga and that integration of all of our chakras together.
Yeah. That's really what it's all about. It's an integration system, and it's the ability to draw more life force in and let it do what it needs to do for our purification, our ultimate purification, which of course would be samadhi, oneness with God.
So for the new person watching this, Savitri,
hold on a second. I can't.
Yeah. Are you having trouble hearing me?
You.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the internet maybe just went out for a moment. I was saying for the new person, how would you suggest they get acquainted? They get to know their chakras and they get to make friends with them. Would you have any suggestions for?
Well, here's a good place to start right here.
That was not. I was not prepping you for the shameless plug, but I guess I did.
Oh well, you don't have to plug my books. I'll do it. No problem. Yeah. So this is a book that Swami asked me to write, and it was the first really true book I wrote. I have another book here called the Chakras Workbook.
Yes.
And this is one I just self-published and put together, and it just had a lot of charts and handouts for when I was teaching a lot of chakras classes. But this is the book that Swami said, we need a real book. We need a book that outlines our path's approach to the chakras. When he asked me to do it, I thought, oh my goodness, how will I ever do that? But then it wasn't long before I realized Swami had in a way already done it. Because in 1982, he gave 5 2 or 2.5 hour classes on the chakras. First day, chakra 1, second day, chakra 2. But all along, he was integrating all of them just as he taught. He would bring up like, okay, let's talk about the attitudes of the chakras. And he'd go from the bottom to the top. And now let's talk about in relation to the gemstones or the astrology or the whatever it was. And he would just day after day give these fabulous classes. And I was there. I was very fortunate. It was 1982, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's right. And so nobody had transcribed those talks. So I decided if I was going to write a book on the chakras, I need to transcribe those talks. So that was the first thing I did. And that took a while. I got some people to help me because, that's well over 10 hours of transcription. It takes time. But then the next thing I had to do was condense it into, I had a certain number of, I was told I only had this many pages, including charts or anything else I wanted to do. You can't go beyond this number of pages. So, I was like, from time to time, I was weeping over having to leave out anything because they were just such fabulous talks. But I tried to pick the best stories that went with each chakra and so forth. And it took me a while to put the book together. But when I finished, Swami told me he was very pleased with how it turned out. He said, Savitri, this is a very good book. And it really explains the chakras simply. That's why it's called Chakras for Starters or Beginners or whatever. But also profoundly based in our path of Kriya Yoga. And it was when he said that to me, I was really moved that he would take the time to say that to me. But I almost said, well, I guess you would like this. There's nothing in it except your words that I just transcribed and put in a book. But I didn't say that. I did sort of hinted that I sort of said, well, Swami, it's sort of your book in a way. And he said, oh no, you put it together, you wrote it. So anyway, it was a wonderful experience to do that.
That must have made you feel good to have that opportunity to condense the teachings on the chakras into
Well,
simple
Swami, by that time, Swami knew me pretty well. He probably knew me well even before he met me, but he encouraged me to be a writer. And that was something I had always wanted to do. But I figured Swami had written everything that needed to be written, just like
Mm,
Swami said that to Master. Well, hasn't everything already been written? And Yogananda said, no, 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 there's much more
right.
needed to do. Well, Swami said that to many of us here also. There's more that's needed.
Yeah.
So,
And his work, right, Swami talked about a number of his books being seminal, being just
yeah,
little seeds, right, that would sprout. And certainly this
yeah.
is one of those that you've kind of tended and this garden has grown from it. What other, then what spawned from there, Savitri, after you wrote Chakras for Starters? Then you've recently you've written a couple novels. Is it two or three? I forget.
There's three. It's a trilogy.
Three. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a trilogy. Well, but between the workbook and Chakras for Starters, I wrote two other books here. I'll just briefly mention and then go on to the trilogy. Um, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find everything here. Anyway, I wrote this book is the Crystal Clarity Carries also, which is the meaning of dreaming. This
Yeah.
is Yogananda's teachings on why we dream and what our dreams mean and so forth. So I was just getting a little more experience in not so much writing my own words, but compiling what Master Yogananda had said, what Swami had said about dreams. And I think I wrote something else. I can't remember what it is right this minute, but
Well,
that's
let's
okay.
talk about that for a moment. I thank you for bringing that up. I completely
Yeah,
forgot. That's a great book. I love that book, The Meaning of Dreaming, and sometimes I think we can get carried away with interpreting our dreams, but that book was really helpful for me. I remember just in one or two dreams that I had, and oh, that's actually what the deeper meaning is
mm-hmm.
there. Can you tell us a
It's
little
helpful.
bit? Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about the meaning of dreaming in relation to how Yogananda looked at it, and we have these different levels of consciousness, but what
Yeah.
what do they mean when we
Well,
have? Yeah, go ahead.
it's actually fairly simple, and it's not something that people often appreciate when they read my book, because what they think is I'm going to give a dream interpretation book. That's what most books on dreams are. If you dream
Right.
about a cow, it means this, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But not Yogananda. He said there's a much bigger thing going on here, and that is that the reason you can dream and do dream is to remind you that life is a dream.
Mm.
Just everything that's going on is a little dream in the bigger dream. Now
Hmm.
we have nightly dreams, but those are just kind of most of the time. There's two kinds of dreams. There's subconscious dreams and there's superconscious dreams. Most of the time we're dreaming subconsciously, meaning memories and what
Hmm.
happened today and what happened when we were kids, and just that kind of it's the mind is weaving memories together and experiences, and it's sort of that's what goes on in most nightly dreams. But fairly frequently, it depends on the person, you'll have a dream that I call it an important dream. You wake up and you go, something was important about that dream. I should try to figure out, was there a message for me? Was God trying to tell me something I need to be learning from the dream? So when that happens, actually Yogananda did give a whole list of, if you dream about this, it probably means this. If you dream about this, it probably, if you dream about water and not just water, if it's running water or still water, or, he does give. And so, of course, I included that so you can have
Yeah.
a little fun interpreting your own dreams. But often we dream that things are not on the list. So what do we do then? Well, there's another little formula that's in the book about how to pick out three major things in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, then list them out and then ask the question, what part of me does that represent? Because
Mm-hmm.
dream symbols have to do with your inner life and what's going on, especially superconscious dreams. So you ask that question, and then you put the list on your altar and wait a while and meditate and pray and say, if there's something I need to know about myself or about my spiritual life or anything, reveal it to me. And often it'll come later. A lot of times when you ask a question like this, you don't get an answer, and you go, well, that didn't work. Well, it has to take a little time to percolate or something.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to be meditating. You'll be walking along doing something else, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, I see what that means. I dreamed about a giant sequoia tree. Now I know what that means.
Yeah.
And it's like it's being revealed to you, not from your subconscious, but from God, from your superconscious.
That's really helpful.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun and very helpful too, because it helps us take our dreams in a deeper way, and not just like we're psychoanalyzing ourselves, but it's more like receiving inspiration, it sounds like.
But one thing that, sort of made me, I've taught a lot of classes on dreaming. It made me not the most popular dream teacher, is that first of all, I would say, I'm not going to analyze your dream. It's your dream. You have to analyze. If you want to analyze it, then you're the one, not me. Because what a tree means to me is not the same thing a tree might mean for you. And you can use Yogananda's lists and all of that, but in reality, you finally have to do that. And then I always have to say the other thing is that Yogananda said most people's nightly dreams are just movies.
Yeah.
They keep you entertained. That's it. They keep you entertained.
Yeah.
Occasionally they can instruct you, but most of the time they're just entertaining. They're mind movies.
Yeah.
And
really helpful how you said that our dreams are there to remind us that we're in a larger dream of God's.
Oh yeah. And that is the main thing, to remind you that this is a dream right now, you and me talking to each other. And so that, again, a lot of people don't want to hear that. they come to a class on dreaming, they want to know what my dream meant every night. And I've known people that keep a dream journal, and every night every morning they wake up and they write it all down, and quite frankly, Yogananda said that is a waste of time. It's a waste of your time. You'd be much better off meditating, of course.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. We're trying to awake from right, to awake
from this dream,
awake from the little dream, and awaken from God's dream.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awaken in bliss. I'm reminded because today, as we're talking on Good Friday, and how Christ said, I and my Father are one. And if there was that other saying, I believe from Christ, if thy eye be single, thy whole body will be filled with light. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the Christ Center, the spiritual eye, and maybe how that awakening in the superconscious bliss of God has inspired this trilogy.
Well, first of all, the spiritual eye for us in the state we're in right now is the most important of the chakras, really. They're all important. But this is the place of enlightenment. The crown chakra is the place of final liberation. The master taught, just this one, you don't pay much attention to. That'll come later. What's more important here is this chakra in its dualistic, all the chakras are dualistic. They have the upside and the downside. But this side has got the medulla, which is where the ego, the little self, the sense of self, and the higher self, the potential enlightenment. If thine eye be single, this means if you can get into that spiritual eye and not make it the double eye of regular vision like we're seeing right now, but see in a single way, see into the superconscious part of ourselves. This is why we're told to concentrate here in meditation, to bring all the energy of the chakras here through all of our various techniques. It's always here in the Agya chakra, Swami called it, and feel our potential for real super consciousness there. And he spoke frequently about the process of creativity. You ask about writing a book. he said, well, it's not hard. You just put all your attention right there and you write your book and it all comes funneling into you from God. Well, that's a little easier said than done, but it's what I've always tried to do when I'm writing, is to get out of this, what my ego wants to say, and try to say what the divine flow wants to say. And when that's happening, all I can say is I don't know how to make it happen, but when it does happen, you can feel it. You know, you're not writing from a I, me, my, what I want to say kind of thing. It's more of letting it flow through you. And people who know this, musicians, artists, anyone who's doing anything creative, can tell you the difference between, well, if they're spiritually inclined, they can feel the difference between me doing it and being a channel for the light that wants to flow through all of us.
That God is the doer type of super conscious flow of inspirations. And so tell us a little bit about the trilogy and how, where did
my
this
favorite topic. Can't wait for this topic.
where did this inspiration come from?
There's three. Well, all along, I've always thought I wanted to write a novel, and I would make little outlines of it. But when in my 20s and 30s, I'd maybe try a little bit. I think this is hard. This is too hard. It's much easier to write a nonfiction book. So that's all I wrote for. And then in about 2000, and what was it, 6 or 7, somewhere in there, Swami called me over to his house by myself. I'd never had that happen. His secretary called me and said, Swami wants you to come over here for tea at 4:00 this afternoon. Oh my goodness, why? He's going to send me to India or something. I don't know. But I thought, well, good. Okay, I'll go see what he wants. And he cut right to the chase. He said, Savitri, I think you're a good writer. Have you ever thought of writing a novel? And I said, well, yes, sir, but it seems like an awfully difficult thing to do. And he said, well, I think you should do it. Do you have any kind of plot in your mind? I said, well, yes, because I have thought about it. And he said, well, tell me. And so I told him a little bit about what I had thought about, a novel about time travel where people would go and visit the other yugas, the past and future of of our planet. And to me, that's fascinating. I've always loved science fiction and stuff like that. And it's some sort of spiritual fiction that would present our teachings. He said, that's it. He said, people are often more likely to read a novel than they are a nonfiction. So if you can write a novel where you incorporate our teachings in it, that would be a great thing to do. Now, he had not at this time written a novel yet. He had written all the plays and things like that, but he hadn't written, he later did them.
Right.
What are the names of them?
Love Perfected, Life Divine.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Those wonderful novels that Swami wrote. I couldn't touch those. They're just the best. But I did my little best. And so then I wrote the first one, which was the shortest one because I didn't know what I was doing. And that is called Through Many Lives. And it's about time travel, a man who learns to time travel. It takes place in the future, our future, in Treta Yuga, which is thousands of years in our future, where everybody just sort of time travels. That's just what they do. And they're totally telepathic. And I just try to describe the way it's described where Swami, through all the Swami and Master's teachings on what happens in lower ages and higher ages. And so it took me 3.5 years to write this little bitty novel because it was hard. And I was going through our teachings. I really wanted to be sure I didn't mess anything up and say something wasn't true and so forth. And I finally finished it. And, I don't know how to say this any other way than Swami was still alive. I gave him my first copy hot off the press, and he read it and he said, it could be a lot better. Yeah, I know. And he did write another novel, and that's called The Time Tunnel.
Right.
So I often tell people I'm directly responsible for that book because Swami wanted something a little different from mine. But I think it's an okay book, and a lot of people tell me they enjoy it. But it was my first shot. So I thought, well, that's it. Swami asked me to write a novel. I wrote it. It's over. He wrote one better. That's okay. Everything's fine. And I just dropped it. Well, after Swami passed away, one day I was sitting over in the chapel at the Crystal Hermitage, and I heard it's clear as a bell, "You're not done. You need to write another novel." I said, "Oh, no." Please, God, that little novel took me 3.5 years. Of course, I'm still working full-time and teaching full-time and all that stuff. But please, no, I don't want to. And but no, it was a direct command. I couldn't tell you with Master Swami who, but it was like, there's no getting out of this. You're going to have to do it. So I said, okay, I'm going to make a bargain on this one. I'm not going to still work and try to write. I want a year off. I want a sabbatical.
Wow.
And I'll try to write one. And I know what I want to write about. I want to write about the chakras. I want to make a novel out of the chakras, because this is stuff I know. I've taught hundreds of classes on this. I have my chakras for starters. I have a workbook. This is going to be like falling off a log. It's going to be easy to write, not at all. And so I did it. I took a year off. And for 3 months of that year, I moved away from home even. I lived in a tent down on the Yuba River and wrote this novel, mostly by the river. So I'm sorry if this sounds egotistical, but I think it's a good novel. I really do. And I had a lot of fun doing it, and it's like it wrote itself. It was like I was taking dictation. It was so much easier. And when I finished it, I was happy. I felt God's smile in my heart. I felt Swami's smile in my heart. These are self-published, by the way. I did publish them myself. And but they are sold through Crystal Clarity and so forth. But it was such a wonderful thrill to realize in a way I had finally done what Swami asked me to do, and done it in the best way I could. And so it's the reason I call it a trilogy is because there are 3 books. I'll talk about the third one in just a second, but the characters are the same. There are young people in the first book. They're in their prime of life and Through the Chakras. And in the last one, how I came to write that, I thought, well, I've got 2. Probably I need to bring the characters all the way to their finale and kill them. But no, let them die and go into the astral world. And then I can write all of that stuff, that wonderful stuff that's in Autobiography of a Yogi about what the astral world is like. With that's chapter, I think, 46 or 43 or something. I must have read that chapter 100 times.
You're talking about the resurrection of Sri
Yukteswar. That's just, and so. But not only that, so I finished this book. I'm done. I've written my 2 novels. Yay. One is so great. One of them's great. So, here comes this voice again. And this time, I'm pretty sure I know who's talking to me this time. I mean, I'm not one that hears voices all the time. If people are going to think I'm nuts, but this time it was the characters in the book. The characters themselves, they said, "You're not done. There's one more that has to be written." Oh, so, I don't find writing something to be all that easy, really, because I want it to be, because I'm trying to represent something much greater than myself, being our path. And I'm trying to do what Swami asked me to do, and that is take the teachings of our path and weave a good story around it. Yeah. And that sounds like it might be easy, but I want here to tell you that it's not. It's a daunting task. But anyway, the characters got their way, and so the third novel came along, and this is called Through the Gates of Death and Beyond. And so the characters, they are commissioned to learn about death, what happens in the dying process, how that happens, what happens with the life review that we have, how do you go through the spiritual eye into the astral world or the causal world, or all the things that are and so the thrilling part of this is that I had to do a lot more research. Chakras I knew. This I went to all the master's old lessons, Yogananda's old lessons,
Mm-hmm.
and because there's great stuff in there about how you literally how you die. What happens to 1 second after you take your last breath, and then the next second, and then what you do and where you go and how you wake up in the astral world, and which astral world you're going to go to. There's a lot of them, and can you go to the causal world? Is that different? What is that like? Anyway, I worked very hard. It took me about 2 years to write the third book, and but I did it, and it's done. And now I have my trilogy, or God kicked me around enough till I did it. People often ask me, "You're going to write some more?" I said, no, I don't know. I don't want to say anything at this point. I kind of hope that I'm finished, but I don't know. Whatever God wants.
Well, thank you for sharing. It's such a fun journey that you've been on, from actually,
Oh,
sharing your own awakening to the chakras, then sharing the teachings about the chakras, and then that, that creative flow that you were talking about just continued throughout your whole life with these novels. That's really very inspiring, Savitri.
thank you. And I still love to write, and I do write a lot, but it's more like writing emails and writing small articles and things. But yeah, I think it's probably second to Kriya and this path. It's the most wonderful thing Swami gave me. He literally lit a fire under me and sort of made me do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of my problems in this life is lack of self-worth, or I'm not sure of myself. Can I really do this? To really write a book that anybody would want to read? I mean, I just couldn't get my self-confidence up in the beginning enough to do that. But with Swami's help and guidance and encouragement, even when he wasn't in his body anymore, I could feel it. And I was so grateful for that, because it has given me, here in the last part of this particular incarnation, such an incredible opportunity to be creative and to have fun and meet people. I get a lot of emails, believe me, from people about my books, asking me questions or telling me they like them or whatever it is. And I've made a lot of new friends that way too, all over the world, thanks to the glories of internet. So it's been great. I couldn't be more grateful.
For someone that is at the end of their life journey, this incarnation, if you will, that might be watching this, how would you suggest they prepare for that transition? One of our other Crystal Clarity books, I think, is called Transitioning in Grace. Do you have any
That's Melina's book. Yeah, that's a good one.
any thoughts in that
Well,
regard?
there's one article by Swami that I pulled on immensely for my Through the Gates of Death book, which is the final exam. It's a small article he wrote, but
Yeah.
in it, he tried to pack just about everything that you need to do to get ready. He calls death, the final exam. And he even has lists of things, introspection work, journaling work that you should do, things to look at about yourself. And if there's unfinished business in your life, well, think about taking care of it. And of course, you would obviously think, which he does do, is to go into what he calls the fourth ashram, meaning the last part of your life, be quieter, meditate much longer, live more apart from people, have a much deeper inner life, because these things will help you transition into, at the very least, a higher astral world. Hopefully you can go past all of them into cosmic consciousness. But Swami was always going for the gold, and master, don't fool around.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the dreams I related. One of my dreams I related in the meaning of dreaming is I had a dream about going to the astral world, and it was so beautiful and so much fun that I got stuck there. I just didn't want to leave. And in my dream, Davy, Novak, the spiritual, Jyoti Shandevi, our spiritual directors, showed up in my dream and said, Savitri, you need this much more than this. You need to keep going. I call that one of my major super conscious dreams. It was like, yeah, I get it. I really like those rainbow waterfalls and all the things in the astral world. It was beautiful. It was fun. I was having a great time. But that isn't it. That's just a way station. And most people, they have their time in the astral world, but they're full back to earth again to work on that karma. And the idea about that is, well, yeah, but why not really keep your eyes on the goal. Don't get lost in the frivolity of the beauty of either this world or any world to come. There's much more.
You're reminding me of Yogananda's words where I don't forget what Swami asked him, but he said, how does the path end, or something like that? And he said it ends in endlessness. It sounds like the
exact quotation was, Swami said to Master, is there any end to human evolution? And Master said, no, you go on until you reach endlessness. And so that's why I subtitled my Through the Gates of Death and Beyond, Adventures in the Locus of Immortality. Loca means location. Right. Adventures in the Locus of Immortality, because there's no death. Forget death. There's a journey.
Wow. This has been endlessness, yes. Wow, this has been such an inspiring conversation, Savitri.
Thank you.
So we will put too in the links here at the bottom of the video to all your books, both Chakras for Starters, The Meaning of Dreaming. Crystal Clarity's working on the Chakras workbook, so that will be coming out at some point, and of course the trilogy, the novel, so everyone can pick them up and find them there.
If you don't mind, I wanted to mention one more little thing.
Yeah, please.
That Crystal Clarity carries is this one CD called Chakras for Starter. A lot of people see this and think it's just me reading the book, but it's not. What it is me talking about the chakras and then leading guided meditations and visualizations for each chakra. And then it ends with Swami reading Samadhi, the final goal of all the chakras. So it's a pretty nice little companion to this book, which I think a lot of people don't know about, but Crystal Clarity does carry it.
Thank you for the reminder. And we have that Crystal Clarity sites being updated, that everything is downloadable and it's going to be available worldwide. So we're working on that too. So yeah.
And I really so much appreciate Crystal Clarity's assistance, help, guidance for me over the years in either publishing my book or carrying a book that I self-published. And I really do appreciate that very much. Thank you, Crystal Clarity.
Yeah, well, we're so grateful for you and for the love and creativity that you've poured into your life and to our lives. So thank you, Savitri.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, we'll have follow-up conversations for sure. We could go deeper into the meaning of dreaming, the chakras, all of it. But this is a great first step for us.
I'm always happy to do that. I really am. I don't do very much public speaking anymore. I really am trying to be more in the fourth ashram.
Yeah.
But from the privacy of my home, I can do a few things. And
I won't bug you too much.
Okay, we'll see how that goes.
Okay, great. So
okay, bye-bye.